Hello, this is Andrew with Simply Made Homestead. Today we're coming to you from our new farm and we're putting up some posts and lines there for our new vineyards. We got an assortment of different grapes and that we're going to be putting up. I went ahead and you see over here I did one row already, but right now I'm going to show you how to do our second row. So to begin with, this show you the tools that we need. Here's a 200-foot tape measure. Obviously you don't need a 200-foot. I have it, works out really great. Just lays out everything you need. It's nice to have a second tape measure to give you more accuracy. Got this post and line level. You gotta make sure your posts are straight. Shovels are good for backfilling. Post hole digger to dig with. And I made this little tamper out of an old shovel handle and just a piece of a 2x4. If you can see this. So this piece of 2x4 here, I just use this to backfill and pack and tamp it. It works really great getting this tight niches. Okay, this is a 9 gauge galvanized wire. You can pick up a roll of it. They come in 10-pound rolls. And it doesn't tell you how long it is. It's about 170 feet. We're doing 60 feet, 20, 40, 60. We're doing 60 feet plus a little bit on each end, so we've got plenty to spare here. Next, we got these posts from Tractor Supply again. These are 4/5 wooden posts. They're pressure treated, and they're 4/5 because they're between 4 and 5 inches wide. So. But keep whatever you get, make sure they are pressure treated. All right, also got some string line. Make sure everything's straight. And to hold the wire, the 9 gauge wire down on top of the posts, you need to have, Maisie, you really need to have fencing staples. This is an old one and they work out really good. This is the only one I have. I'm not going to use any. So in a pinch, I just got couple of nails. You just pound them in, make a little X, and you run the wire through there, and it works out just well, and I'll replace it later on down the road. All right, and lastly, you're going to need something to anchor in the wire at each end. You can use a wooden post, or make sure it's pressure treated, some sort of a stake. I've got plenty of these T-posts in, so I'm just driving these in down, and so that this will anchor the ends of the wire. When you're making your vineyards, put your posts 20 feet apart from each other in distance. You also want each row, if you're going to do successive rows, they need to be 10 feet apart. So and then also 10 feet distance between, we got 10 feet distance between that fence there and our first row. So I'm going to add another 10 feet between that first row and the second row, and as we expand later on, we'll add another 10 feet to the third row. The reason why you want 20 feet is you're going to eventually put your vine right in the middle, and as it grows up, it'll spread on out, and you'll do that successfully. So we got 3 plants we're putting on this first row, another 3 on the second row. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go from this first post, measure 10 feet from the very end one, and put 2 flags there, and run that tape measure all the way down so we know the distance to put the other 2 posts. All right, so we got 10 feet here. We're going to run this on down to the other end and measure 10 feet from that end one. All right, so I put flags every 20 feet. I don't need this tape measure here anymore, so I can go ahead and pull it out. Get it out of the way. What we want to do next is go ahead and post down the 2 ends. We'll have to get the height where we want them to be so that it matches there. We'll run a string line to the very top of those, so that way when we do the middles, we have the even even line all the way across there. So first thing we gotta do, we gotta do these two end ones. As you're digging down, you don't want to disturb the inside of this hole. You want to dig straight down and as vertical as possible. That is going to stay nice and compacted. It's just naturally compacted that way. As the pole goes in, it won't give it all. It'll help keep it vertical. However, you do need to dig down on the sides. I like to create like a taper, almost like a little V, little paths, and that way you can get in there and repack around it. Because if you can't, you have to dig it open so you can pack it in. Otherwise, you won't be able to get any tools in there to pack it, and it'll be really, really loose, and you won't move it around. You can also put some concrete around on the two end ones. That will help anchor it. I don't think I told you this, but we have 8-foot poles, and we want our fence line to be right at about 5 feet. And so we're putting 3 feet in the ground. This has got a handy dandy measuring tool right here. It tells you how your depth of where you're at. If yours doesn't have it, you can just put some tape on how to measure out where you want to be. So I know right at the top of this is where I want to dig down to. So just make sure that these are the same height. This just needs to go down about 1/2 inch. I'm just going to kind of thump it down, help compact that little bit of loose soil down there, and we should be good. If you've never used these before, we got several different levels on here. The gauges tell you which way it's going, the bubbles. So if the bubble is this way, that means it's leaning that way. So I'll just bring it up and it's level. So same thing with over here. There's another one here. It tells you this way. This one is more if you're horizontal. We won't use this one, but we use these two. Right now, because I don't have anything to hold it in, I'm just getting a good idea of where it's going to go, kind of get it settled. All right, you got dirt in there. Now we'll start backfilling. When you do this, you want to work on one direction at a time. So right now, I'm trying to get this way back and forth taken care of. And then once I get that pretty well packed in, then I'll start working on this way, make sure it's level and well packed. All right, on to the next one. Okay, so now we got both ends up. We're just going to put a string line all across the top of them, and that way we know exactly where to put the height of the other two. All right, next thing we do is set these middle two. We know how high and where the top is supposed to be, so that way it's mostly level and it'll be in line with everything else and make it all pretty. Good morning. So last night I ran out of light, but we got all the posts in, and this morning we're going to go ahead and put the line in and show you how to do that. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we want to bring the line in, but we got to anchor it down. You want it to come down about 45 degrees. So I'm just using these posts. You don't have to use a T-post. This is just what we have. And so if you're going to use a wooden post, make sure it's pretty sturdy and that it's once again that it is pressure treated. I'm just measuring, eyeballing here. That's about a 45-degree angle, so I know where to place this. Now when you place your stake, you want to make sure it's going in opposing that way. So this will be the angle that I want to go at. Make sure it's in line with where you're going. You don't want it to, otherwise it'll kind of draw the post sideways. So you can see I drove the post in quite a ways. These were 6.5 feet posts. It's probably 30 inches sticking out. You don't need to drive them in that far. However, I didn't want to have the sticking way out over here. It's just for mowing purposes, just gets in the way, so I just drove it on down. All right, so we pick up our 9-gauge wire here. This first end is really easy. You just kind of wrap it around. There's no tension on it, so it's fairly simple to do. It's the other end. You have some tight tension on it. It's a little bit more difficult. So just going to wrap a loop on around here and roll it down. All right, so when you're unrolling this, one thing I learned, you want to make sure you walk it down. By that, you just walk it down this way. If you take it and unspool it without walking it, it leaves a spiral and you'll end up making a big mess. It's kind of like trying to undo a slinky cord, a slinky. It's just not very fun. Hey, now that we got our anchors down, before I fasten it down, I want to run the wire up on top. So I'm going to go through and go ahead and fasten the wire to the very tops using those nails. All right, then you just put one nail in, make the other one, put X, and just tap this in. All right, and that'll hold it in. Okay, so you remember that old staple I used? If you had these, they work out really well. Make sure you leave a little gap, don't hit it in all the way. Okay, so we got the line strung across the top. If you want to cut off some of this excess, you don't have to work with it. Now's a good time. Just make sure you don't cut off too much. All right, so I know I'll need at least this much. Plus, there's a little bit in line, so I'll just cut this off. This leaves me a good amount here to work with. I want to get this fairly low down here. Then all that does not need to be all the way down the bottom. Well, I got it pretty strong and pretty tight now. It's important that your very first bend on these is where you want it to be, because it's hard to get these bends in the wire out. There we go. Once you get it, then you can kind of wrap it around. like so. And then I just run the excess up this line to help hold it. So you can see this is still fairly tight right here. I still want to get a little bit tighter, so I'll show you how we can do that. Okay, so to tighten this up, I'm just going to drive this down a couple inches. By putting this down, this brings it down further, putting more weight, create more tension on that line. Sledgehammer works really good. I don't have one here out with me, so I'm just going to use the back side of this post hole driver. All right, hopefully you can see how well that worked out. Just enough to hold the vines up there. And as years progress, time goes by, this will sag a little bit. You'll probably have to pound this in a little bit more, maybe readjust it, retighten it. As the vines grow, add more weight. That's later on down the road. First we gotta get our vines up. All right, well, I hope this was good information for you and that you got some value out of it. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button and don't forget to click on subscribe. Thank you for watching Mary and I's channel here at Simply Made Homestead. Take care and God bless.